Welcome, everyone, to District 5520's Training for Club Treasurers. This meeting is being recorded for people who are unable to join us, and we'll be sending out a link to everyone later, and they'll be posted on the district website. I know that most of you have heard this a million times. Let me just remind you that if you have a question, you may either raise your hand using the reaction button at the bottom of your screen, or you may put it in the chat. I'll be watching for questions and make sure that they are forwarded to our presenters. We'll leave mute off so that you can ask questions since we're a small group. If something becomes noisy, please mute yourself, or I will endeavor to mute you. Let's see, what else do we need to know? Our presenters today are past District Governor Bob Rausch, who is our district treasurer, and past president and soon to be past district grants chair, Peter Falley from the Rotary Club of Silver City. We're delighted to have them both with us. Please make them welcome. Please have a great morning. Here we go. Governor Bob, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Governor Sunny. I am very happy to be here, and I'm very pleased to meet most of you. Some of you I've met in the past, some I haven't. And it's great to have you here on this Saturday morning. Thank you for taking the time to join us today. I would like to just start out with a few introductions and then go around. We have a really intimate group this morning. So I'd like to ask everybody to introduce themselves as well. Name, club. If you are an incoming brand new treasurer or not, or if you are currently a treasurer. And then what kind of financial experience you have, financial knowledge experience you have in the past as well, just so we know who we're working with here. We have Dr. Taylor just joined us as well. Excellent.
Sorry, I was with the client. Lost track of time.
Likely story. We hear that all the time. What club are you with, Dr. Taylor?
Rotary Club of Clovis.
Clovis, excellent. Excellent. Okay. So again, I'm Bob Rausch. I was district governor 2 years ago, and I'm with the Albuquerque Del Norte Club, and I was the club treasurer for 2 years, I think, many years ago. So I do have some experience in that area. I have 25 years of experience as a financial advisor as well. I'm not a CPA. I'm not an accountant, but I do have a working knowledge of things accounting a little bit, and a little bit of memory of what it was like to be the treasurer. So I'll be sharing that with you. Peter, could you give us a little background as well on you?
Yes. Okay. Can you hear me? I am the current district chair for District 5520. I'm also the treasurer for the Silver City Rotary Foundation, which is our charitable arm of our club. And I've had prior experience with budgets and the like in my earlier life as a university administrator. So that's my background.
Thank you, Peter. And Peter will be sharing how treasurers will get involved with the district and Rotary International Foundation later in the presentation. Let's start off with George. Could you give us a little, introduce yourself and a little of your financial and treasurer background?
Yes, I'm the younger of the two Georges from Los Lunas. and the only reason I'm here is that I'm a new assistant governor, and so I wanted to understand a little bit about what treasurers do for the benefit of my own experience, because I have no financial experience, and so that's me.
Perfect. And George Hobbs, how about you?
I'm an accountant. I've been in public practice for approximately 50 years. I've been the club treasurer for the last at least 30 years. And that's the extent of my experience.
Cool, cool, okay. What do you want to get out of your time today?
George,
Thank you for
What's that?
joining us, and you'll have, and I'm sure you'll be able to share some knowledge with us today. What would you like to get out of your time today?
I just want to know what I'm supposed to be doing as opposed to what I'm doing.
You're probably doing everything right. Okay, Richard Miller, let's go to you down in El Paso.
Good morning, Richard Miller, with the Rotary of Downtown El Paso. I am a CPA and I'm an incoming treasurer for the club.
Have you been a treasurer in the past?
Not for the club, no.
Okay, okay. Perline, could you give us a little introduction to yourself and your experience?
I'm Pearline Estrada. I'm with the Carlsbad Rotary Club. I've been the Rotary treasurer for a few years, and I'm a retired finance director and city clerk for the city of Carlsbad.
Excellent. Okay, okay. So you're a city clerk. Excellent. Okay. Okay, Joanne, could you give us a little idea of who you are and your experience, please?
Joanne Campbell with the Rotary Club of West El Paso. I am a retired CPA and I was a treasurer for 3 years, a few years ago.
All right. Gosh, I think I should cede the presentation to y'all because y'all got a lot more experience than I do in this. And George, we've already talked. Asa, let's a little insight into who you are and what you're about.
I'm the treasurer of the Santa Fe del Sur Rotary Club. I also am a CPA, and I've been the treasurer for something like 10 or 12 years. Before that, I was president of the club. And before that, I was treasurer for 10 or 12 years.
Wow. Okay. All right then. And then Dr. Sandra Taylor, a little background on you, please.
you're muted.
Yeah, unmute, please.
I was trying to find out how long I've been treasurer. I can't find it. So it's been several years, probably, I don't know, maybe 6 or 7 years, I guess. My background is higher education. I am an accountant, have my doctorate's degree in higher education, and I serve as the director of the Small Business Development Center. And I'm also a QuickBooks Pro advisor as well.
QuickBooks, excellent, excellent. So you can share some experience with that with the rest of us as well. All right. So as I mentioned, there's a wealth of experience joining us this morning here. We only have like one newbie here as far as the treasurer goes, and that person is a CPA. So let's get on with this. And I'm going to share my screen so you can see my notes. And then at the end of the presentation, Sunny will send a copy of my notes, my outline to y'all as well, which will include the links to several areas that might prove helpful. So hold on for a second while I bring her up here. There it is. Y'all see that okay?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. All right. So we are already through the welcome here. One of the main sources of information for this presentation is from our Rotary International Learning Center. I've got a link there for that as well. So preaching to the choir here, but bear with me. In my mind, the main roles of the treasurer for the club is to work and inform directly the president-elect, and the club board on all things financial with regards to your club, and help them all with their financial decisions. Assist the president-elect in building the new club's budget coming up. on a more regular basis, invoice and collect and submit dues, pay club bills, file your club's Form 990. That's always a sort of a sore point in our district from year to year. Keep the club members informed on the fiscal health of the club and work with the Rotary Foundation. So, how to get ready for the new year. So, if you haven't been to the Learning Center for a while, I would recommend you go there. That's got the latest and the greatest information on just being a treasurer in the district. So go to the Learning Center and just review that. It's not voluminous. So no more than a half an hour of your time to go through the Learning Center. And there's some nice links there as well to take you to other areas. We'll talk about that. Richard, you're incoming new treasurer. So I would recommend that if you haven't already, start spending more time with the outgoing treasurer and shadow that person on a regular basis, just to see what their work is like, their pace, and the things that they work with, and find out from that person any issues that are going to carry over into the new year. Probably none, but every once in a while there's some issues that maybe going into the new year that you're going to have to address with the president and the board.
Oh, have been in contact, yes.
Yeah. If your club, we have some big clubs and we have some small clubs here today. In Carlsbad and Los Lunas, Clovis, do you guys work with any software for the club treasurer, like QuickBooks?
Yeah, so we use QuickBooks Online Plus.
Okay, excellent. That is, I think that's kind of appropriate for larger clubs. Smaller clubs, there is a fee for that, and it's quite involved. It's not like just you can't just jump into QuickBooks and start working it. There's a bit of a training goes, and it's not.
Sorry.
That's okay. There's not a lot of carryover. If you're into Quicken, there's not a lot of transferability from Quicken to QuickBooks. There, QuickBooks is a little bit different there, as I learned when I took over as treasurer. If you do adopt Quicken, make sure you do it right, because when I was in a club treasurer, we had one or two treasurers in my preceding me that worked in QuickBooks, and they didn't do it well. And so it took me and we hired a bookkeeper for our club as well. And it took us most of the year to fix it. In addition to our normal activities, we were trying to get QuickBooks to be fixed. So make sure if you get involved with QuickBooks, that you get good training ahead of time. So you do it from the beginning. And then right now, if you haven't already, you should be working with your president-elect to draft that budget, that balanced budget for next year. Let's see where I'm at. There's stuff on there. Okay, anyway. Your sources of income, primarily your dues, donations, and fundraisers. Your major expenses that are going to be included in your budget include your meeting room fees, your meals, administrative expenses like postage, and expendables like paper and ink, equipment, and the dues that your club's going to owe international and the district on a semi-annual basis, as well as expenses to support your community projects and youth services, RILA and Youth Exchange. I think my personal opinion is, and our club isn't compliant with this, but I think your dues, and this is philosophical, your dues should fully support the fixed expenses in your club, like your meals, dues, and administrative expenses. That's what your dues are for. Their charitable activities like the working in the community and the youth services, that should come from donations and fundraisers. So that's how I think a budget should be set up. Unfortunately, or not even unfortunately, but it's a fact that a lot of clubs raise money to, in addition to their dues, to support their day-to-day operations. And that's I guess, to prevent having to raise the dues. But I think the dues should fully support the fixed expenses of day-to-day operations of the club. And then fundraising should support your charitable organizations and charitable activities and youth services. Any comments on that? So work with your PE and your board to determine how you're going to handle that. You should also in your budget have a surplus of funds. Too little surplus or too large of a surplus can be problematic. Too large of a surplus and you don't look like a tax exempt organization anymore. You look like a for-profit organization. Too little funds and unexpected expenditures that come up may not be able to be met. And then you have to have a come to Jesus with your club. So I think about a 3-month buffer of fixed expenses is good to keep as a surplus fund in your accounts. Any comments on that? No? Okay. Now there's going to be deviations. Your budget is a best guess on what your income is going to be and what your expenses are going to be. Some of them are fairly fixed. You know what your dues are going to be based on your membership. You know approximately how many people come to your meals. So there's a lot of stuff that's not really guesswork, but there's a lot of stuff in terms of charitable and youth expenses that aren't fixed. And so this is your best guess. So that's what your draft budget is a best guess of what your income and your expenses are going to be and how you're going to balance that budget. Through the year, some people aren't going to spend their budget. Other people may go over their budget. And so you're going to have to deal with that through the year. And that's where your surplus comes in, is to be sort of a shock absorber for things that you weren't expecting. Realize that when your board approves your budget, and they should be the approving, you're not the approving authority on the budget, nor is your president, it's your board that is the approving authority on your budget. Any deviations from the budget in terms of overspending a particular budget item or spending on things that weren't approved in the budget has to be brought back to the board before you do that. The board has to approve these things, otherwise you're going outside of your authority. And then that can cause problems as far as running out of money or ruffling feathers with the members. Once your budget is approved by the board and is balanced, then it should be presented to the membership. Now, you're not asking for the membership to approve it. That's what the board is there for. They're all elected by the members to do that. You're just presenting that to the members so they understand what the club's income and expense projections are for the year. There is an Excel budget worksheet in the Learning Center that you can use to help when you're building your budget, if you need that. Okay. Any questions on the budgeting? Going well.
Very clear.
Okay, thanks. Dues. Another big issue with the financial operations of the club. Your club is going to be, has 3 different dues that they have to deal with on an annual basis. Club dues. And most clubs, I think most clubs charge dues on a quarterly basis. Some may do it on, especially even smaller clubs may do it on a monthly basis, but I think most clubs do it on a quarterly basis. They may roll in, some clubs roll in other expenses in their dues billing, such as meals, or every Rotarian every year. For instance, our club bills quarterly on meals, as well as the every Rotarian every year. Our club bills $25 per quarter to every member for E-Ray, every Rotarian every year. So our club makes a $100 minimum, $100 per year every Rotarian every year goal. And then members, when they join, they can opt out of every Rotarian every year if they wish to. And we have a few members that have opted out. So it's voluntary, but it's semi-automatic. That's how our club handles club dues. District dues are billed on an annual basis in July. And it's based on your club membership as of 1 July. As are the Rotary International is billed twice a year, half in July and half in January, and it's based on your club membership on the first day of July and the first day of January. So it's really important that you get with your secretary and president in June and December to make sure that your numbers, your membership numbers, are going to be accurate on the 1st of January and July. So you don't get overbilled. Rotary International is not going to take any excuses after they send out the invoice. Your invoice is it, and you're going to have to pay it, regardless of whether it's accurate to the number of members you have or not. You're going to have to pay it. They don't go back and change it, and the district would rather not either. That can be quite cumbersome if we have a number of clubs that come back and say, well, we don't really have that number of members. So we don't want to pay that amount. Have your numbers accurate, if at all possible, please. 1 January and 1 July. In January and July, I would have a reminder somewhere to remind myself to pay that dues, get that, review the invoice and make the dues payment. Or to find out that you haven't received your invoice from RI or district. And it happens every year that we'll have several clubs that will in the fall or even winter months, they haven't paid their dues yet for the previous year or for the previous 6 months. And we get with them and they say, well, we haven't got the invoice. Well, that's no excuse. The main reason there is that your clubs or your treasurer's or your president's address is not accurate with Rotary International at the district. So it's very important. I mean, all we have is all we have. And so, that invoice is going to go out to the last address we have, or if there's no address, the invoice doesn't go out. That doesn't mean you don't have to pay your dues. You have to pay your dues, darn it. So again, in June and December, make sure that in Club Runner and in Club Central that you have the proper address. I would advise you to have a club address, a PO box that doesn't change, and it's registered with RI in the district, and all your mail comes to that post office box. That's accessed by your secretary primarily, and the president and the treasurer as a backup. So it doesn't change as your member, as your president, your secretary, and your treasurer change. It doesn't change, and it's always coming into that address, and it can be easily accessed. The dues for next year at the Rotary district, at our district level, is going to be $35 per member, as of with the membership you have on record as of 1 July. The RI dues go up, they go up. And in the next fiscal year, those are going to be a total of $75 per member. And it's billed twice, so it's $37.50. Now, I believe Rotary International actually does a pro rata adjustment based on what your membership was is in January versus what it was in July. So, and I'm not sure how that works, but I believe it's you get a little pro rata consideration there. Please don't write a check to Rotary International for your dues. Half to 3/4% of the time, half to 3/4 of the time, it's going to be lost or misrouted. Your invoice gives you all the different options for paying your dues. And if at all possible, have a club credit card and put it on the club credit card. Some presidents put it on their own personal credit card, which is okay. And then they get reimbursed by the club. You can also do a wire transfer, a direct transfer from your club account to the RI account, the appropriate RI account. All that. Go ahead, Sonny.
Governor, you have a question in the chat from Joanne who wants to know who's responsible for keeping membership current with the district.
That's up to your club, but I would suggest that it's a secretary's job.
Normally, that would be the case, yes.
Yeah. But as a treasurer, I would work closely with the secretary to make sure those numbers are accurate on a regular basis. Did that answer the question, Joanne?
Yes, thank you.
You bet. You bet. Thanks for that. Excellent question. Okay. What kind of things are you going to be doing on your day-to-day, week-to-week operations as your club treasurer? Well, collecting money and paying money out. Most of that happens at club meetings. As far as collecting money goes, checks, people, if your dues aren't like in QuickBooks. In QuickBooks, dues are you can bill and collect dues on a recorded credit card through QuickBooks. So no money has to change hands, no checks are written. It just happens electronically, which is really nice. At our club, we have a few members that don't like to give us their credit cards. And so on 2 or 3 times a year, somebody would just bring me a check for their dues. And then I would have to properly account for that and deposit that check. So we also collect, like most clubs do, they collect cash from Happy Bucks or fines, and that all has to be collected as well and taken care of. I, as a treasurer, would take that right after the meeting, right to the bank and deposit that. I would come to the club every meeting with deposit slips and receipts. And I would give receipts to people that gave me cash, and then I would make out a deposit slip and I'd go right to the bank and make a deposit that afternoon. So I didn't take any money, if at all possible. I didn't take anybody's money or any receipts back to my house. Now, I didn't make all the meetings. So I had an understanding with the secretary or as I mentioned, our club has a bookkeeper as well. I had an arrangement with them that they would collect that, but they wouldn't make the deposit. They would collect it and I would get with them as soon as possible after the meeting to get that money from them. It may be at the next meeting. And then I would make the deposit. If somebody brings you cash, make sure you give them a receipt and keep a copy of that receipt. If somebody asks for money, somebody may just buttonhole you right there at the meeting and say, best case scenario in this is I would like to go and buy this or pay for that. Can I have some money, or is that okay? Well, you are not the approving authority for expenditures. One, it's already been approved, money's already been approved through the board, through the budget. Or you're gonna have to go either to the committee chair or to the board to get that approved, if it's not in the budget. Now, let's say that somebody is a member of the membership committee and they want to buy some brochures to be distributed to enhance, to increase membership. That's all within the membership budget. So they don't come to you, they should come to the committee chair for the membership committee and ask them for money to do that. And then if it's within the committee budget, the membership committee budget, fine, just go. And then the committee chair gets with me, the treasurer, and says, hey, I need a check, or you're going to get an invoice for this, please pay it. Fine, that's okay. It's all been pre-approved. But again, you are not the approving authority. It's either the board, the committee chairs that approve the expenditures. All you're doing is accounting for it. If somebody wants money that's not in the budget, they say, hey, I think it'd be a really good idea if we bought this or did that. Say, well, I think that's a great idea. I'll bring it up at the board at the next meeting, or I'll if it's time sensitive, I can get with the president, and the president can bring it to the board electronically and get a vote on it and it approved, and I'll cut you a check at the next meeting or whenever. But don't just do it because it sounds like a good idea. It's got to be approved through the board. Worst case scenario. Harry comes up to you after the meeting or before the meeting and says, hey, I just bought this and I need a check for reimbursement. I think it's a great idea. I took care of this. And look at this, what I bought for the club. And this cost $150. You can make a check out to me. Not so fast. Again, that's the nice thing about not it being at the board's responsibility. Is it's not your responsibility or your right to approve or to pay for things that aren't budgeted. Say, I'm sorry, this wasn't approved. It's not in our budget. I'll take it to the board. It probably isn't going to be an issue, but I can't speak for the board. We'll vote for it, and if they approve it, I'll be glad to write you a check and move on from there. Does anybody have any experiences with these? No? Well, that's good, because I have. That's why I bring it up. It can get kind of uncomfortable, but if you rely on the board as your backstop, nobody can come to you on it and be personally upset with you.
Governor,
Yes, ma'am.
it's useful to manage expectations with all club members by having a policy that nobody can spend club money without board approval. If you have that clear stated at the outset, it's less likely to happen.
Yeah, and if you have that in your bylaws,
Yeah.
then you can quote the bylaws and just go
Yes.
from there. You just go from there. And you're right, Sonny, that would certainly maybe help with that and keep the temperature down on discussions.
I suppose we should be saying that to the PEs rather than to the treasurers, but since we have the treasurers here, we'll say it now.
Accounting wise, we already talked about QuickBooks. That's an excellent but very involved and somewhat expensive accounting software. Large clubs like Carlsbad, Clovis, those clubs could benefit, I think, if they don't already use QuickBooks. Perlene, do you have a software, a third-party software that you use for accounting for Carlsbad?
We use QuickBooks. I use the QuickBooks Online because when we done the cost analysis on it, it was going to be cheaper to do it online than to have to upgrade every time that they upgraded, and they upgrade frequently. So we use QuickBooks Online.
Thank you. Excellent. Asa, you're in a fairly small club. What accounting methods do you use there?
So I have access to QuickBooks, so I use it.
You use QuickBooks as well? Okay.
The club doesn't pay for it. I just have access to it.
Okay, okay, excellent, excellent. You know, as a bare minimum, we have some clubs that have 8, 10 members. And QuickBooks would be way overkill for that club. You know, a stubby pencil and a good paper journal would work fine for a small club like that, as long as it's done well, you know, by the treasurer. A journal that is kept up to date on income and expenditures, as well as a profit and loss page in your journal, in your paperwork, is a bare minimum. So you can go back at any time and you can recreate or research expenditures or income. Also, generate and keep receipts. I'm not a CPA, but would somebody disagree that interject that I think that, you know, on a personal basis, you can be audited for 7 years. So I think 7 years is a good time to keep your records. After 7 years, it's probably okay to get rid of them. Would anybody argue that?
Only with regard to capital expenditures, you might want to keep them longer.
Okay, Sonny, so you answered. So I would ask, how long would you keep them? Or why would you keep them longer than 7 years?
Well, I'm not an expert at this. This is just, it's more, I notice it comes up more for me as a personal matter. But for example, if you have assets that you may be transferring later, and you need to change the basis, or if you want to be able to prove what you acquired them for, you might want to keep them almost forever.
Yeah.
I'm thinking this is going to come up more for large clubs like Santa Fe doing pancakes on the plaza with lots of equipment. But if you have anything that is significant like that, you would keep it longer.
Well, you keep the receipt, I mean, yes, the receipts
Yeah.
for as long as you have the assets, and maybe 3 years after you sell the assets.
Okay.
But
Thank you,
beyond that,
Sandy.
I wouldn't keep it once those assets are already gone.
Okay.
Precisely.
Very good. Very good. Very good. Regularly, reconcile your journal, your checkbook with your bank statements. And if you find inconsistencies with the bank statement and your records, reconcile those quickly. Don't let them go on or say, well, we'll just deal with this down the road. It's no big deal right now. Get them done. Keep your records current and accurate. Because reconstructing things 2 or 3 years down the road can be, if not problematic, impossible. Impossible. And then people come and go out of clubs, treasurers come and go, committee members come and go. And somebody that has the corporate knowledge may be in a different part of the country when you need to tap that information because you didn't do it at the time. Do not disperse money without an invoice. If somebody says, you know, I need money to pay this invoice, can you give me a copy of the invoice? With a copy of the invoice, then there's never any questions about questionable expenditures. Never a question.
You know, Robert, one of the things that I have done is those expenditures where there's not a receipt, especially like for scholarships. So I've
Yes.
created a document where whatever member is asking for the money, then they have to fill it out with their name and the purpose and everything. So at least I have a paper trail.
Very good, Sandra. Thank you for that. We had, I'm not going to name any clubs, but we did have a club here in the not too distant past that dispersed a lot of RI money for scholarships. Didn't keep records of that scholarship and nor how that scholarship money was used by the recipient of the scholarship. And RI came and asked for documentation. They didn't have any, and it caused a lot of problems. So scholarships is you have to have good records on who the money went to, and that person has to document back to the club on how that money was spent. Thanks for that, Sandra. Okay, moving on. Taxes and the Form 990, another kind of a sore point that crops up annually. Most clubs, if not all of our clubs, are tax exempt 501c4 organizations. They don't pay taxes. They are not a charitable organization, but they are a tax exempt organization. And so annually, the club must file a Form 990 with the IRS. And all it is a documentation of how much money went in and how much money went out and what the purpose of the organization is. That's pretty much what the 990 does. Different forms of the 990. For very large clubs or organizations that have gross receipts in excess of $200,000, they need to file a regular Form 990. If the gross receipts are less than $200,000, then they can file a 990 EZ. And if their gross receipts are $50,000 or less, then they can file a Form 990N, which used to be called Postcard 990. Everything is done electronically now. You don't have an option. It all has to be done electronically, including the 990N. I've included in my paperwork here, you can see I have links to all that. So, and we'll be getting that out to you if you need that. But you need to file a Form 990, appropriate Form 990 annually. Now, when do you do that? The IRS website says it's the 15th of the 5th month after the end of your taxable year, which is, I would call also a fiscal year. Our district, Rotary International, and I would say most clubs run on a fiscal year of July to June. The 5th month after June is November, and so the 990 has to be filed by the 15th of November every year for the previous fiscal year. Most clubs comply with that, but some clubs don't. Mostly because of ignorance, not knowing that they needed to do that. What's the penalty for non-compliance? Well, if it go long enough without filing a Form 990, and you have to go back and you have to refile past Form 990s, and there's penalties for each filing that is late. If you go long enough, and I don't know what that number is, the number of years, but that club could lose its tax exempt status, which is bad. If you lose your tax exempt status, all of a sudden you become liable for all your income tax going back to your last Form 990. So that's bad. So it's very important that you get that Form 990 filed, and the 990 EZ and the 990N are fairly easy to do. Once you filed one, all you have to do is get the last one and update it and file a new one. It's really easy. Do any of our CPAs have any comments on that? Or accountants? Okay, excellent. Transparency of reporting. I think it's really important that the treasurer, that the board, through the treasurer, keep the members informed of the financial issues with the club on a semi-regular basis. As a minimum, once a year, you're going to tell the club what the budget is, and possibly how the last budget ended and what is expected in the new budget. when you are reporting, and now you could do it on a quarterly basis, or even sometimes some clubs on even a small club might even do it on a monthly basis. When you're reporting to club members, keep it fairly general. Don't get down in the weeds. Very, very high level on your reporting. Income, sources of income, major expenditures, and the bottom line. We're on track. We're going to go over budget. We're well under budget, things like that. Let me backtrack a bit on something I forgot to mention on building the budget and surpluses. It may occur from time to time that your club accrues a significant surplus because it's just not spending the money that it's taking in, and it accrues a significant surplus. Well, how do you get rid of that surplus? And that's a good problem to have, by the way, but it is a problem because members will begin wondering, why are you holding so much of our money in the club treasury? Maybe we ought to have a dues reduction to get some of that money back, or why aren't you spending the money that we gave you? So that raises questions. Last 2 years ago, we had a significant surplus in the district because of COVID. We didn't spend a lot of money that we collected because of COVID. So we had a very large surplus. We decided we were going to distribute that back to the members, and we had to figure out a way of doing that on an equitable way that's fair to all concerned. You've heard that before. We decided that we would have our district dues for a year. So everybody got billed 1/2 dues for a year, and that corrected that. So you may have a surplus in your district account or in your club account, and to rectify that, you may have a deficit year or a deficit 1 or 2 years where you actually plan on spending more than you're taking in, and you show that in your budget. We're going to have a deficit of X amount of dollars. And you explain it to your members. That's so we can draw down on an equitable basis the surplus that we have in our district or in our club. And so you explain that to everybody, and everybody should be happy. Now, if you come and we don't have a lot of money in the club, and you come to them with a deficit budget, they may think that you feel like you can do the same things as our U.S. Treasury. You can print money or you can borrow. You can't do either of those. You can't print money, you can't borrow to make up for deficits. So you have to balance your budget, otherwise, or you have to spend money from your surplus. Any questions on that?
Yes.
Go ahead.
And I'm not sure if this is a IRS thing or not. But as a nonprofit, there is a limit of how much monies that we should have in our checking account. I just know another club, not a Rotary club, just one of those other civic organizations. They had, and I guess it was the IRS, got a letter that they had too much money and that they needed to get rid of it. And I don't know what that threshold amount is.
I don't either, Sandra, but that's a great point you bring up. If the IRS believes that you have too much money for the size of your organization, let's say, and you've had that money for a while, so that's whatever those numbers are, I don't know, they will start being suspect of your tax exempt status. You will start to look like a for-profit organization as opposed to a not-for-profit organization, because you were actually accruing money. And so they'll start questioning your motives. And then you could lose your tax exempt status if you don't alleviate that or address that in one or a number of ways. Did that answer your concern there, Sandra?
Well, you're just telling me, Robert, I just need to go research it. I was trying not to have to go research it. I was hoping someone knew what that threshold number was.
I don't. Does anybody?
I'm imagining it's going to be relative, depending on duration of the time it's been there, the size of the club, the activities of the club, you know. I don't know if there is a rule that we can find. Anyone?
I think she's right. If you can demonstrate you need the money, you can have it. If you have no purpose for it, then it could be a concern.
That makes sense to me. Anyone have any other information about this? Well,
So what
Governor, go ahead, Sandra.
So what about Rotary? Does Rotary have any guidelines on, well, you should have this amount in your account, a minimum amount in your account? And the reason why I'm asking this question is because, of course, we are looking at doing some different things with our members, probably charging them more, and it's because of where we are with where we want to have lunch. And if we don't have to raise our dues, if we can dip into our surplus, then that may be an option. And this is even to keep people. We've already had 2 people that may quit because we're going to raise dues. So just trying to kind of think through that process.
Yeah, there's no direction from RI on how much you should have in the surplus. That's really a board decision.
Governor, I recall that a couple of years ago, the council on legislation initiated a requirement for mid-year reporting to clubs. Do you remember this?
No, I do not.
I don't have the citation for you, but I recall it's in conjunction with election of officers in mid-December. There should be a reporting to the clubs on the financial status as well. I'll see if I can find that.
Okay. I think that's good. A mid-year course reporting on what the club is doing, how the club is doing financially. I think at the beginning of the year, the fiscal year, a presentation of the budget for the coming year, and then a mid-year report on how you're doing. I think that's a minimum. When you're doing the report, before, to prepare for that, think of what questions may come up and be ready with the answers to that. If somebody has an objection to a spending line, don't feel like it's your responsibility or your blame. It's, again, it all goes to the board. So mention that you'll take that back to the board and we'll entertain that. Or maybe you'd like to come to the board and you'd like to present your position to the board for a change to the present budget, or maybe a consideration in future budgets. That's certainly appropriate. But don't say, hey, I'm sorry, I should have thought of that. That's not, don't ever do that. That's all taken care of by the board. You're just there to help the board and the president manage the money of the club. Okay. Possible areas of concern. And I think I've covered most of these already. Requests for getting reimbursements without prior approval. Unresolved discrepancies in the club books. If you have a discrepancy in the books with your bank statements or whatever, and you can't get them resolved, you're going to have to get with the board and explain it and come up with a solution. And then fix it. Just get it fixed. It may be a one-time line item, and that I've got to change this number here. We're going to put this against miscellaneous, and we're going to use this to get our books back in order again. If you suspect some nefarious activity where people are spending money on things that weren't authorized, or they were authorized to spend money in one area and they spend it in another area without asking for approval. That's going to be have to be dealt with on a one-on-one basis, respecting privacy. And if necessary, you can elevate that to a district level. The district does not have enforcement, but it can give you ideas on how to best deal with that, from the president to the district treasurer or anybody else, depending on the situation. But it's best to just take care of those things when they occur, and then have a way of preventing that from happening again. Remember, and I can't stress this enough, the board is responsible for expenditures. You're just there as an advisor and facilitator. Okay. That is the summation of my presentation to you. If you have any other questions, come up to them in the chat box. And now I'd like to punt this over to my cohort in crime, Peter Fowley, that will discuss how you as treasurers will be working with the Rotary International Foundation and the District Foundation on donations and grants. So Peter, you can take it away.
And let me interject real quickly. Don't forget to stop sharing your screen, sir. And
Thank you very
let
much.
us welcome Arvis Jones from the Northeast El Paso Club, who has joined us.
Thank you. My apologies. I thought it started at 9:30. That's why I came in late.
Oh, okay. Well, we're glad to have you. Thanks. It's being recorded. You'll get a link and you'll get copies of the materials as well.
Excellent. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. Peter, the floor is
Okay,
yours.
welcome, everybody. I'm happy to be here. I hope you are happy to be here. Bob did a wonderful job of talking about the treasurer's functions generally. I'm supposed to tell you something about how the Rotary Foundation fits into things. And to do that, I'm going to share my screen and hopefully this will work. I always have problems with this. I don't know why.
I think you got it here. Yes. Well, so far, so good.
So far, so good, yeah, but I don't know. It never wants to work the way I want it to work.
It helps if you have it open before you start.
I always try that.
You
Anyway,
got it.
can you see me now? Can you see it now?
Yes.
Before I go
Yes.
else, let me say one thing about what Bob was talking about. When you are paying for scholarships out of Rotary Foundation funds, you cannot make payments directly to the individual recipients unless they present you with a evidence of having paid tuition or other fees to the institution. You can reimburse them, but normally the best thing to do is to pay directly to the institution that they will be attending. So be very careful about that, because the Rotary Foundation strictly forbids payments directly to individual beneficiaries. Again, you can do anything you want with your club's money, but not with the Rotary Foundation money. So that's something to be kept in mind. Whoops. I can't even see my own screen properly. So what's the Rotary Foundation? It's the charitable arm of Rotary International. It's a 501c3 charitable organization, as opposed to a C4, which is a tax exempt organization, but not charitable. Your club is a C4, as Bob has pointed out. The Rotary Foundation is a C3. That means that donations to it are tax deductible. Donations to your club generally are not, unless you have your own separate foundation, and then donations to it can be tax deductible. The purpose of the Rotary Foundation is to fund RI projects generally and programs. And the Rotary Foundation is a big organization. It currently manages about $1.3 billion in net assets. and it's one of the top charitable organizations in the country. It's very highly regarded everywhere. Now, where do they get their money? The money to the Rotary Foundation comes primarily from individuals and clubs, and to some extent from other organizations and friends of Rotary. But it's donations from individuals, not fees or dues. And then, of course, they have investment income. The foundation has an endowment fund, and that is invested, and the income from that contributes to what the foundation can do. As I said before, dues to RI and the district, they come out of member dues, do not support the Rotary Foundation. The donations to the Rotary Foundation must be solicited separately and paid for separately. Donations to the club are not tax deductible, but donations to the foundation are. So that can't be repeated often enough. As far as the funds that the foundation has, these are the important ones. The annual fund share, which is most important, the Polio Plus Fund, the World Fund, and a disaster response fund. That was introduced, I think, only recently. I'll talk more about the annual fund share, but just let me look at these three, the Polio Plus, the World Fund, and then the annual fund share. Polio Plus, of course, is the project to eliminate polio once and for all from this world. And it is a fundraising project that usually takes place every year in October. Clubs do their own thing to raise funds for polio and then transmit it to the Rotary Foundation. There's a Polio Plus Society for people pledging to contribute $100 annually until polio is eliminated. And over the years, since 1979, when Polio Plus first started, or the polio eradication effort started, we've raised $2.1 billion from Rotarians. That's quite a chunk of money. And of course, additional billions have been committed by the governments of countries where we've been active, and by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. The Gates Foundation has been doubling everything we contribute over the last several years. More than doubling, actually. Every dollar we put in, they put in $2, so that's pretty good. And we managed to reduce polio cases worldwide by 99.9%. There are only 2 countries where polio is still endemic, and those are Pakistan and Afghanistan. And you can understand why it's difficult to do things there. The World Fund is designed to support large international and regional projects through global grants, disaster response grants, and something that was introduced more recently, programs of scale, which are on the order of $2 million or more. They're usually designed to pick up on a successful global grant, let's say, that is scaled up to a regional or international level. Now, the annual fund is what we're supposed to contribute to every year, every Rotarian every year. The idea is that we each contribute $25 a year at least. The goal would be to contribute $100 a year to the annual fund. And we should put that money in what's called the annual fund share, which is the portion of the annual fund that gets distributed after 3 years back to the districts and also to the World Fund. After a 3-year period, as I said, you can make other contributions to the annual fund, for example, to an area of focus, but those kinds of funds do not contribute to the district designated fund, which is the money that comes back after 3 years to the district. So if you're contributing to the annual fund, make sure you pick annual fund share. Now, the way the money is used, the annual fund share, after 3 years, the Rotary Foundation takes 5% of that money for administrative expenses and then gives 47.5% to the World Fund to support global grants, basically. And the other 47.5% go to the districts as district designated funds. And the district designated funds may actually also get some money from the endowment fund. There's a portion of the endowment fund called endowment fund share that allows its earnings to be distributed back to the district designated funds. And then if there's money left over from previous years from district designated funds, they can be added to the current year's district designated funds. So that's how the EDF is made up. Now, the way the money is used, actually, the Rotary Foundation itself administers global grants. And they have their own rules about how all of that works. District grants are awarded and administered by the district, although the funding has to be approved by the Rotary Foundation, but the district goes through a process of applications for district grants and then approval. And then once all the district grants are approved, they go to the Rotary Foundation for final approval. And then the money comes back to the district and the district distributes it to the clubs. And the district grants are based on contributions to the annual fund 3 years ago. And there can possibly be an incentive bonus based on contributions in the current year. So that's how district grants are administered. Let's see. What's the treasurer's role in all this? Well, first of all, you do collect, as treasurer, you do collect donations from individuals, from members, either at a meeting or by way of a check. And those donations need to be transmitted to the Rotary Foundation with identifying information, of course, so that the individuals get credit for their donation. There are 2 forms that you may use. One of them is called an individual contribution form. There's a link here to that. It looks like this, I hope. Let's see if it's there. Oh yeah, that's the individual contribution form, and you could fill it out. And it tells it over here in section 2, you are to designate the purpose of the money, okay? And most of the time you want to go for annual fund share, except when you're doing the Polio Plus, and that you want to check that one. And you can also contribute to the World Fund, the Endowment Fund share, or the Endowment Fund for Rotary Peace Centers, or you can contribute to a global grant, in which case you have to indicate the grant number that you're contributing to, okay? So that's the individual contribution form that you may have to fill out if you're transmitting in one individual donation. There's also a multi-donor form, which looks like this. Here it is, where you can indicate a whole bunch of donors, up to 20, I think, can go on this form. And again, you designate the purpose of the funds, but notice they would all have to be pretty much for the same purpose. You know, you'd have to say they're all for annual fund share. Otherwise, you're going to have to make out individual donor forms. So this is a way to identify the donors to the Rotary Foundation when you send them money.
Peter,
Yes,
you've got a question in the chat from Dr. Sandra Teller Sawyer. Verifying contributions for the 4 funds are all eligible for Paul Harris.
yes, good point. I don't know if I did that earlier in there.
I don't believe you did.
Oh, yeah, it's a little hidden up here, but it says contributions to these funds
Ah,
for Paul Harris Fellowship recognition, okay?
excellent. Thank you for the question, Sandra. That was really helpful.
Yeah,
And thank you, Peter.
Very good point. So where was I?
You were
Okay.
looking at the
Okay,
forms.
you can have members who ask that their donations be billed as part of the dues invoice. And you may want to do that, and then the money comes to you by way of their dues check. And then you have to contribute, then you have to take that portion that belongs to the Rotary Foundation and transmit it. The important thing is to transmit money to the Rotary Foundation pretty much as soon as you get it. You don't want to wait for the end of the quarter or the 6 months or a year. Problem is the Rotary Foundation takes a bit of time to record this information. And it's important in some instances for that information to be up to date. For example, when we do district grants, that's based on donations in a particular year. And if the donation does not appear in that year, then your district grant amount may be reduced, so it's important to get that money in as soon as possible. Of course, members can also make contributions directly to the Rotary Foundation on the RI website by using the donate button. Another role of the treasurer, of course, is in assisting and managing the district grant funds if your club is getting district grants. And that's something that has to be taken pretty seriously. In the district grant management, you have to be sure to keep a separate accounting of those funds, deposit the district grant check as soon as it's received, but no longer than 15 days after receipt. And make sure there's documentation for all expenditures. As Bob has pointed out, that's necessary for everything. But in this case, all of these invoices or receipts have to actually be sent to the Rotary Foundation as these, and to the district, I should say, as the grant is processed. And you have to work with the point of contact for the district grant to make all that happen, to do the reporting. And they will probably need your assistance in formulating their financial report on the district grant. Now, if you need more information, here I am. And if you have any questions, I'm open. I took less time than I promised you, Bob.
That's
That's
great.
okay, I went over.
So Peter, I know you put the link to your slides in the chat, and we will send it out with the link to the recording. If you want to stop sharing your screen, we'll look at everybody and see if there are any questions.
By the way, I want to say one more thing about the 990.
Yes.
The 990 has to be filed every year, as Bob has pointed out. If you don't file it for 3 years, you lose your tax exempt status. So that's really important. You don't want to have that happen to you. If you lose your tax exempt status, then you have to apply for reinstatement, and then you're reinstated. Normally, our tax exempt status is inherited from RI. we share their 501c4 status as a club. But once you lose yours and you reapply, then you become a freestanding 501c4. And you are responsible to the IRS directly, and things get a little more complicated then, and you may not be on the same fiscal year anymore either. So things get pretty hairy if you ever lose your tax exempt status.
Very helpful, Peter. Thank you. Can we do a full screen so we can see all the participants and find out if anyone has any questions? This is your chance, everyone. Any final comments before we adjourn?
Oh, I'll ask a question as the amateur here.
All right.
So I understand all clubs are C4s, but a lot of clubs, they have an endowment fund. So I assume if you have an endowment fund, is that like, so some of the club is C4 and then the endowment fund is C3, or how does that work?
That sounds like instead of an endowment, more of a foundation, George. Is that, are you talking about like a club foundation?
Well, yeah, I'm just asking in general, not for any specific situation, but I know an individual club, they can apply for C3 status. Anyway, I was just curious if you were going to, if you're a C3, if you're a C4 and you want to be nonprofit status, you just apply to be a C3, and then the whole club's a C3.
Yeah,
Peter will address that. We
That's-
do that in Silver City.
that's a little over my head. I know a lot of clubs have their own foundations that are 501c3s. And that money is kept totally separate from club money. They have their own board, and they're designed to do local charitable organization, charitable activities with the donations to that foundation. But it's separate from the club.
Okay, thank you.
And donations
Carl-
to the club's foundation are tax deductible, of course.
In
Peter, do you need to-
Carlsbad,
Go
sorry.
ahead, Pauline.
In Carlsbad, we have a Carlsbad Foundation. It's not operated by Rotary. It's a separate Carlsbad Foundation. And our endowment or scholarship funds are run through them.
That's another way to do it. Thank you, Pauline. Peter, anything to add?
Nope, not at this point.
Okay, thanks for the question, George. Very important. So there is a whole other board, whole other treasurer for the club's foundation, if they have one. Reporting requirements and all of that. Well, I will just take this opportunity on behalf of all of us and on behalf of our district to thank Governor Bob and Peter Falley for outstanding presentations on issues pertaining to club treasurers. We will be making this widely available district. The link, the recording will be on the district website, and I'll be sending it out to you all along with the links to the materials. I want to also mention, in case you were not aware, that next Saturday from 9 to noon, we'll be doing a training for club board members. I don't imagine you'll need to attend, but you may know someone in your club who would want to be there. The registration is available on the district website. Richard Haas, Governor-elect, and I will be facilitating that training. Please come or send someone if it's appropriate. Any other final comments before we adjourn?
Yeah, can I just, since we mentioned the foundations, I should say one other thing about that.
Yes, go ahead, Peter.
At least here in New Mexico, reporting requirements for 501c3 foundations are more onerous than just the federal reporting requirements. You, a 501c3 in the state of New Mexico also has to report to the Attorney General and to the Secretary of State. There are two separate reports that have to be made every year, in addition to the 990 that goes to the federal government, to the IRS. So the reporting is a little more hairy at the state level for 501c3s.
Interesting. Thank you, Peter.
It was the AG and who else?
The Secretary of State.
Thank you.
All right. I'm going to stop our recording.